पहले हम सिर्फ
Namaskar. Good
लैंड,
morning.
सी और स्काई
Inspired by the leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister, the forward-looking approach of the Ministry of Defence, the vision of Department of Space, and the encouragement from stakeholders in the defence practitioners and space industry, SIA-India is pleased to welcome you all to DefSAT 2023. This is India's first international defense and space conference and expo that will focus on the intersection of strategy and industrialization for space applications in national security. This morning, we take the pleasure of welcoming the honorable dignitaries who are seated with us on the dais. We warmly welcome in our midst Dr. G. Satheesh Reddy, Scientific Advisor to Honorable Raksha Mantri. May I request Dr. Subbarao Pavuluri, President SIA-India, to kindly welcome the honorable dignitary with a bouquet of flowers. We warmly welcome in our midst Shri S. Somanath, Secretary, Department of Space and Chairman ISRO. May I request Dr. Subbarao to kindly present a bouquet to the honorable dignitary and please welcome him. This morning, we have the pleasure of welcoming in our midst Lieutenant General Tarun Kumar Aich, AVSM, Deputy Chief of Army Staff Strategy. A very warm welcome to the honorable dignitary. We have the pleasure of welcoming in our midst this morning Air Marshal Surat Singh, AVSM, VSM, Director General Air Operations. A very warm welcome to the honorable dignitary. We warmly welcome in our midst Lieutenant General PJS Pannu, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, retired, former Deputy Chief, Indian Integrated Defence Staff Operations. Now that we have welcomed the honorable dignitaries on the dais with flowers, we start this morning's inaugural session with the welcome address by Dr. Subbarao Pavuluri, President SIA-India and Chairman Ananth Technologies Limited. Please put your hands together and give a warm welcome.
Good morning and namaskar to everybody. I don't know whether I should say warm welcome because Delhi is already hot. But anyway, welcome with all warmth. Distinguished personalities on dais, Dr. Somanath, Secretary Department of Space, Dr. Satheesh Reddy Garu, Advisor to Raksha Mantri, Dr. Air Marshal Surat Singh Ji, DG Air Operations, and Lieutenant General Tarun Kumar, Deputy Chief of Strategy, Indian Army, and my dear participants. We welcome you all. Thank you. Now, what is important is, we are doing this DefSAT 23, India's first international defense space seminar, in the light of what the Prime Minister has been talking about, Atmanirbhar Bharat, and the inclusion of the space and defense to work together for the good of the nation. In fact, if I can quote what the Prime Minister always says, in fact, one of the meetings he clearly said, space technology is an example of what security will mean for any strong nation in the future. Various challenges in this area have been reviewed and identified by 3 chiefs, service chiefs already. Now we have to work fast to resolve them, unquote. This is what the Prime Minister said. That means there is a demand, there is a requirement from the space, from the defense side, and industry also to be ready to work towards that. So therefore, we have to bring in the inclusion between the space and the defense area in this country. So the object of this seminar is to make this happen. In fact, yesterday, we had a very good, General Pannu and General Kandare conducted a good session in which, of course, most of you have already participated. The requirements that is needed from the defense side and the requirements, whether the industry can meet in this country or not. That's the kind of exercise that has been done. And it was found that most of the requirements of the Army, Air Force, Navy can be met by the industry in this country. And thanks to ISRO, which has developed this industry over a period of time, and always thanks to many MSMEs, SMEs, then we have a lot of startup companies who have been eagerly working towards this end. So again, from this forum, I would like to assure the Army, Air Force, Navy that Indian industry can meet the requirements of all of you. But what is required is some kind of action from the government side in order to enable the activity to be taken up by the industry immediately. I'm sure that things can work out very well, and I'm sure our guests will throw more light on how this can be taken place in future and how industry also can be involved. Thank you very much. Warm welcome to all of you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Subbarao, for that warm welcome address. Ladies and gentlemen, seated with us on the dais this morning is Lieutenant General PJS Pannu, PVSM, AVSM, VSM retired, former Deputy Chief, Indian Integrated Defence Staff Operations, and Chair of the Aerospace and Defence Committee at SIA-India. May I now request the honoured dignitary to kindly deliver the thematic address. Please put your hands together and give a warm welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You all form the part of the space community of our country. And today on the dais, we started with Mr. Rao giving out the necessity of why we are here together. As the president of the SATCOM Industries Association, I think great initiative has been taken to conduct a program like this, a 3-day event where the defense and the space community would sit together as one. And on the dais, we have Dr. Satheesh Reddy, who's headed the DRDO for a number of years, and now is the advisor to the Raksha Mantri. With that kind of expertise in the defense technology and how the industry is to be supported, along with Shri as Somanath, who's heading the ISRO. I think the defense and the space heads of empowering the space community are here together today, and they would be speaking on the same platform, goes to show what DefSAT 2023 can do. Also here we have with us Army representation, the Air Force representation, both stakeholders. And also we have the DG of the Space Agency sitting here, right, participating in this event. And yesterday, with all the think tanks participating, the CENJOWS, which aggregates the knowledge of the think tanks, is a knowledge partner of SIA, brings together a great thought process in which we together will be able to build a roadmap, not only for the defense and the space community put together, but also for the industry to know what needs to be made, how much needs to be made, by when we need to make it. But at the same time, the military community, Army, Navy, Air Force, the Space Agency, the Cyber Agency, all put together, all 5 domains, have to really come together to put the operational philosophy of the defense space together. Once the operational philosophy is in place, we would find the doctrines, we would find the strategies, and we would find the roadmaps coming out very clearly. I think industry really wants to know what is a specific ask as far as the capacity, the capability that the industry must provide for. And Dr. Rao, yesterday, when we had the war game, we had 2 sides of the war game, and why we started with the war game yesterday was to understand what is a delta, what is a gap, what is required. So we built certain scenarios in which we wanted to know the readiness of the industry to cater for the scenarios that we had built. And we were pleasantly surprised industry not only understands, but is also willing to invest, provided the tangibility of what needs to be done is clear to them. And Dr. Rao, earlier also, when I met him privately, I visited his establishment, the facilities that he's created. He made a statement yesterday also. He says the industry is ready, but we are just waiting for tangible orders. You tell us what is to be made. So therefore, the entire curation of DefSAT 2023 is based on the entire gambit of how the space warfare is going to unfold and empower the war-fighting capability of a country. You can only do how much you can see. So if you see the area of operation or the area of interest and influence from the space, only then can you do something about it. But if you don't see, don't have the resolution, you don't have the swath, you don't have the entire information available to us, you only have a data, but you don't have the processing of information, you don't have intelligence. So are we going to have the ready industry to provide you intelligence as service? But at the end of it, what do we do with the data and the intelligence which is available to us? We have to take action because you are today talking about the remote control and precision warfare. The economy of the nation cannot afford hit and trial in warfare. You have to have precise warfare because the arsenals cannot be loaded with imaginary scenarios. So that you cater for anything, at the end of it, you need something which you don't have. So the last scenario which we painted yesterday was indicative of the policies, the space policies already in place. But last scenario indicated whether this space policy is adequate for the defense space industry to ready itself for the future. We also spoke about the rapid response capability. The rapid response capability, we had an imaginary size of requirement and the time frame of requirement. Two things came out of it. Launch on demand or activation on demand, or manufacturing on demand, or thinking on demand. That once you demand, you will start thinking, you will start researching, you will start creating infrastructure, you will start making budgetary provisions, or would you build something which is shelf ready, or would you already have something which is launch ready, or would you have something which is already launched and ready only to be activated in case of a rapid response. So the rapidity, which has a factor of time in it, could not be understood by the industry to say, by when do you want this size of the problem that we put out? It was imaginary size of, say, 200 satellites of varying capabilities to be put for a rapid response capability. So having said that, so on one side is the policy provisions, on the other side is the technology which is going to be superior than the adversary. You cannot be second best because second best loses the battle. You have to have better than the adversary. And yesterday, the scenario building was that we had a benchmark of what the adversaries have put out against us and how and when are we going to respond to it in that contested environment or come to a place where we checkmate them, or when is that we are going to be superior than them is something, of course, a more desirable proposition. But at the end of it, the roadmaps have to come out of that. So during the 3-day exercise, culminating today, which is today, now we are doing inaugural, but yesterday was laying the foundation of what the environment would provide to us, we had space diplomacy. That if the government doesn't have the elements in place, does private industry have the elements in place? And if private industry doesn't have elements in place, then are we going to rely on foreign players? And if we're going to rely on the foreign players, is our space diplomacy in place that in a jiffy we can get those friends to fill up that what we don't have currently? So yesterday, then second was the space diplomacy. Today we will start as the intelligence as service, coming backwards, information, data. What is the ISR capability with the government, with the private industry, and with the foreign players put together? We are going to find that also today. And then, of course, we will continue to go into the PNT services for precision war fighting and how we are going to influence the capability as a deterrent. The technology now is not only part of the comprehensive national power, but I think technology is also a deterrent. You demonstrate a capability, use a deterrent. The ASAT became a deterrent. Dr. Reddy at that time was heading the DRDO. They did ASAT, Shakti, which became a deterrent. So over a period of time, I think we need to work together. And at the end of this exercise, I think we will have to, and we will be able to find the roadmap for the industry and of the nation, space and defense put together. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, sir, for that pertinent and thought-provoking thematic address. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the pleasure of welcoming in our midst this morning Air Marshal Surat Singh, AVSM, VM, VSM, Director General, Air Operations. May I now request him to kindly share his thoughts with the august gathering. Please put your hands together.
Good morning, space community. That's what Pannu sir rightly said. The fact that all of us are sitting here and interacting with each other indicates that we have some interest in space to provide facilities or use those facilities or applications. Few decades back, if people talked about, I need more space applications, probably they move the chairs away. But today when we say we need more space applications, we will probably huddle together to interact more and more. That is the change if you look at last 5 decades. Firstly, I must compliment Director CENJOWS and his team for organizing this conference, which is a very, very apt subject for India in general and for the armed forces in particular, and especially the Air Force. Given the increasing importance of space in our lives, especially in the military environment, it is imperative that we discuss the matter threadbare in order that we can constantly stay ahead of the curve. This conference is well timed in light of the ever more capable space ecosphere emerging in the country, and especially in the private sector. It is also my firm belief that the recently released space policy will give a definite shot in the arm to all those who seek to exploit space, as well as to those who are involved in R&D and manufacturing sector and developing the space capabilities. As a practitioner of aerospace power, I firmly believe that space is but a continuum of air. While the physical properties of the two domains may vary with increase in altitude, but doctrinally, one is to be viewed as a seamless extension of the other. In large part, this necessitated by the need for space vectors to transit through the medium of air during their ascent and descent, and thus the air defense naturally transcends into aerospace defense. The ever-increasing exploitation of the near space band of operating altitudes has made this continuum even more seamless. And this seamlessness is exactly the reason why the Indian Air Force needs to transform into an aerospace force. And this is rightly reflected in the third version of the IAF doctrine released recently. It is imperative that doctrine and organization structures pave the way for the acquisitions, tactics, and training, which will turn naturally and lend themselves to better exploitation of the medium. If you look at the environmental, look at the environment around us in terms of space capabilities, the northern neighbor is fast transforming into a major spacefaring nation. And it is time for us to move towards developing our space capabilities so that we are not left behind, as this domain will define the outcome of future wars. Information warfare and its ties to space systems and modern information technology is also changing the face of aerospace power. Advances in satellite communications and information applications have added new dimensions to definition of military power and air power in specific. These capabilities are key to military aerospace power's future and need to be addressed in a definitive way. In the last 3 decades, in addition to satellite communication for beyond line of sight solutions, it is evident that the exploitation of space domain has increased manifold, especially in the field of ISR, navigation, targeting, space situational awareness, and meteorological operations. The nations are also engaged in developing critical technologies to cater for offensive operations through this medium. From Indian perspective, amongst the 3 services, IAF has its air operational role very closely knitted with space operations in terms of targeting, which is dependent heavily on the ISR through space and air mediums. Unlike land and sea operations, wherein there exists a clear distinction for conduct of operations, space and air operations can never be separated and conducted in isolation. Hence, the operational missions, especially post-Gulf War, there is a rush for forces to acquire air and space assets, even by those who are mainly operating in land and maritime domain. IAF has always aligned its operations and would definitely continue to do so with the rapid advancements in space operations. IAF's space resource utilization for enabling air operations could be segregated in satellite communication, which is secure and reliable, the PNT services, ISR, targeting, space situational awareness, satellite meteorology, and to top it up, the human in space program. Considering the likely threat from space, which could be in space, from space, or through space, the IAF, having vested with the responsibility of air defense, is aligning and expanding its situational awareness beyond the Karman line. Since space and air medium are inseparable, situational awareness in space and air situational awareness needs to be tightly integrated together to have a comprehensive and seamless situational awareness to thwart any imminent danger to national security. IAF will be progressing towards integration of our IACCS with the SSA in the coming years. Thus, the future would be to evolve IAF into an air and space force to cater for multi-domain operations. Down the line, IAF would continue to focus on acquiring both defensive and offensive capabilities in space, with key focus area while looking at space capabilities will be for effective monitoring from space for the land area, and have secure communications with advanced encryption techniques for resilient communication and data links. Redundancies to all the space-based services, launch on demand capability to cater for augmentation and substitution during denial scenarios. Parallelly, options of soft and hard kill will also need to be explored in the coming years to match up with the adversary's capabilities. To develop expertise in the field of directed energy weapons and disruptive digital technology. Few of the areas for leveraging space for national security will be dual-use technology for spin-off from Indian space program to be used to boost other sectors, and this demands better hand-holding by major agencies in the government agencies for the private sector, mainly ISRO. Involve more academic institutions, PSUs, and industry for giving boost to our space program and developing capabilities. Seeds for same has been sowed in the form of Defense Space Challenges initiative of the Government of India, which will be giving opportunities for the space industry to come up with niche technologies. Cooperation and agreements with other friendly countries for development of space programs and sharing of technologies, especially towards situational awareness. Near space assets, that is one area which needs to be explored further and further, wherein you have the pseudo-satellites or the HAPS equivalent, which will be able to provide the capabilities of monitoring at least up to 72 hours without relying on actual satellites. It's a good option available in a denial environment and also a very low-cost option in the present environment. Invest in space surveillance capability by installing long-range tracking radars and optical telescopes. Development of EW capabilities through space is another area in which we need to focus more, because that is one area which can provide quantum capabilities in terms of leapfrogging in the operational scenario when you have these in space. Hardening of our space infrastructure, not only against cyber attacks by better encryption and quantum encryption, but also shielding from EMP and other space-based weaponized platforms. Finally, in order to have these capabilities, the bottom line is ensure our operations flow unhindered and degrade the enemy. To catch up with other space-capable nations, including China, especially from the perspective of national security, we need to bring up the local industry by promoting Atmanirbharta, educational and research institutes to gear up to the rapidly changing technology and requirements in the field of space. We must remember the one who controls space would not only control the battle space, but the 21st century in itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your presence here today and for that special address. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the pleasure of welcoming in our midst this morning Lieutenant General Tarun Kumar Aich, AVSM, Deputy Chief of Army Staff Strategy. May I now request him to kindly share his thoughts.
Dr. Satheesh Reddy, Dr. Somanath, Dr. Subramani, General Pannu, General Srivastava. Distinguished guests, all officers and friends from the media and industry, good morning to all of you. At the very outset, I would like to compliment the Director General, Center for Joint Warfare Studies, CENJOWS, Lieutenant General Srivastava, his team, as well as the SATCOM Industry Association, SIA, for organizing DefSAT 2023. I also take this opportunity to compliment all the dignitaries who have participated till now and shared their views on defense space. This conference will provide a platform for all stakeholders to understand better the requirement of military space domain. It presents an opportunity for all stakeholders to align and synergize their efforts towards developing the desired capabilities and capacities. Military utilization of space is a rising phenomena as brought out by the earlier speakers, which has been witnessed since the first Gulf War in 1991. The successful exploitation of space assets in Operation Desert Storm in Iraq was a clear step towards much greater reliance and utilization of military space assets in areas such as communication, intelligence, surveillance, recce, and use of precision-guided munitions. During Op Iraqi Freedom, US forces deployed 66,000 GPS-guided munitions and over 100,000 GPS receivers. They also used 10 times the satellite capacity and 42 times the bandwidth of what was employed in the Gulf War of 1991. Nations and militaries across the globe have recognized space assets and space technologies as must-have capacities to ensure economic development as well as military capabilities. As a result, every country, irrespective of its economic prowess, desires to have its share of the pie. As space is being equally exploited for commercial as well as military requirement, new and exciting innovations and disruptive technologies are emerging on a regular basis. The last 2 years have witnessed a hectic space in the launches, with China undertaking about 50 to 60 launches per year vis-a-vis USA, which undertook only about 45 launches. Military applications of space per se include SATCOM-enabled network-centric operations, satellite-based surveillance for missile launch detection systems, tracking and target detection of strategic and tactical missiles, and ELINT for the detection of air defense and weapon radars, and hyperspectral imaging for detection of camouflage weapon storage sites. In addition, the synthetic aperture radar for day and night mapping and better detection of metallic objects, targets, and communication intelligence for monitoring adversary communication signals over an area of interest. Precise positioning, navigation, and timing data through satellites show accurate navigation and precision application of firepower in the operational areas, thereby enhancing the ability to shape the battle according to the commander's operational plans. When we look at India's concerns in our neighborhood, China's space program has remained militarily oriented and controlled by the PLA. China is rapidly improving its ISR, navigation, communication capabilities with the support of its space assets. In 2007, as we all know, China carried out an anti-satellite test. The creation of the PLA Strategic Support Forces in 2015 for the purpose of integrating space, cyber, and electronic warfare is indicated of China's intent to extensively utilize space for enhancing its operational preparedness. Pakistan can be seen as a proxy space power with China's backing. It is actually going to ride as far as the capabilities of China is concerned. Space can greatly enhance battlefield transparency, assist in acquiring precise coordinates, prioritizing targets, and boosting the adversary's target capability. Anti-satellite weapons have raised apprehensions about the safety of our own space assets. Therefore, capability development needs to be achieved through continuous technological advancements enabled by a robust research and development structure, infrastructure development, international cooperation, and financial support. The nation should be looking up to achieve self-sufficiency in the space domain and simultaneously realizing the dream of Atmanirbhar Bharat. While certain degree of military space prowess has already been achieved by us, further space capabilities need to be developed in the space domains. When we look at SATCOM, we talk of dedicated communication satellites and data relay satellites customized to meet the military requirements which need to be operationalized. Large, low Earth orbit constellations for communications like Starlink, OneWeb have already proved their efficacy, and we need to explore the route. Quantum as a niche technology, and that needs to be developed and acquired at a fast pace to provide unhackable communications in the military. In ISR, we need to develop better revisit and resolution capabilities at par with the advanced space-faring nations. Together with imaging needs, a parallel approach needs to be adopted for developing space-based signal intelligence capabilities. Multi-tiered micro-satellite constellations need to be weighed against a few voluminous, complex, and expensive satellites. We need to consider if we should focus on the development of microsatellites with multiple payloads rather than large satellites which are vulnerable to ASAT weapons. Applications related to position, navigation, and time are vital for the precision targeting at longer ranges. We need to harness the indigenous IRNSS, that is the Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System technology for satellite navigation systems being employed by the armed forces. There is also a need to empower the Defense Space Agency to become the lead to cater for the desired capabilities and capacities in the military space domain, and in order to enable a coordinated and a joint services approach in the exploitation of space for the military purposes. Along with the requisite space assets and infrastructure, it is imperative to train our personnel for creating the pool of space professionals who can integrate all service applications and provide technical as well as strategic solutions for integrating space in the planning and the conduct of military operations. At the end, I would conclude by saying that space has until now been considered as an arena of global commons. However, today, nations across the world are on a spree to control the space and deny its use to other nations. Space, thus, is playing an increasing role in the domain of national security. Under the given circumstances, there is a need to adopt a considered policy that integrates both societal and national security needs in a balanced manner. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for this special address. Ladies and gentlemen, we have in our midst this morning Shri S. Somanath, Secretary, Department of Space and Chairman ISRO. May I now request the honored dignitary to kindly guide us with his vision and wisdom. Please put your hands together and give a warm welcome.
Good morning, all of you. Dr. Satheesh Reddy, Dr. Subbarao, Air Marshal Surat Singh, Lieutenant General Tarun Kumar, Lieutenant General PJS Pannu, and all the distinguished participants in this DefSAT conference 2023. My greetings to you all. And I'm really happy to be part of this conference, which looks at how space and defense are connected very well and how the Indian industry can leverage this opportunity to come into this domain in a big manner than that was not possible in the past. We all realize that the space capability in India was developed over a period of time, last so many years, 60 plus years, with the help of many people. But then today, after 60 years plus, we have an end-to-end capability in terms of building space systems in India and also accomplishing missions that we look for. And that too, in a frugal manner, with a cost-effective manner than that ever possible otherwise. The realization that the space is for strategic use that has come some years back. Of course, in the origin of space program, it was more towards the civilian user, common good, public good. All these were the narratives that was given to create the basic space ecosystem, and it was necessary at that point in time. And the whole of the capability of the space for this as an asset for strategic purpose was not well understood. I think the realization over the period of time, not now, it has been there, created a little back, and we have been working hand in hand in this aspect to create and make the facilities and systems available at the disposal of the space agency, primarily in terms of the communication and the observation capability to some extent. And this has been serving certain purpose with the institutions and systems that has been created. But as already been mentioned by the previous speakers, the realization is now much more evident that the power is lying here and it need to be created and enhanced substantially. And this is also very important for the collaboration of the space activity with the defense and the industries in a greater manner to really scale it up. And it is not possible in the current structures that we have followed. And this is a result of this thinking is not only for civilian and for strategic sector, but also considering the civilian use, is the need of the release of the space sector reforms in 2020 and the new space policy that has been announced in 2023 now. And we realize strategic assets are not the so-called strategic assets. Most of the assets that we talk about are really the strategic assets, which could be the civilian assets as well. That realization is also very strong now. Of course, in the space, what we can do are well laid out, and we know very well in terms of the communication, observation, signal intelligence, timing service, and position service. I think those spectrum is really very clear. And it's equally important, the strategic capabilities, the ability for a nation to place its satellites and objects in space at its own wish and its own timing that it chooses. That requires the launch capability as well. So creating the launcher technology, sustaining it through the industrial production in numbers that is needed is also an equally important capability. I think that we are very proud that we created that capability in India. Today, we have the power to launch any satellite of any reasonable satellites that we need to launch to the orbit as much as we need. Of course, here again, we see the opportunity for industry to come in and scale up. And that's what that effort is currently going on in scaling up the capability of Indian space sector to do more launches by building it in industry. Possibly, here there is a small catch that the demand of the launch has to be created and then you have to build. You cannot keep it building it because it is a capital intensive investment. And we cannot simply launch as much as we want, and it's purely connected with the need. We also realize that expansion of this launch capability in terms of the mass that we need to carry is also to be increased, considering the civilian as well as strategic sector, which I may elaborate a little later. Yet another capability is the reusability, which is very, very, very important because the overall cost of access to space also has to be brought down. I think many of these elements have been addressed in some manner or the other in the overall visions for space in our organization as well as with the government. The space sector reforms primarily put a different perspective on all of this. I think many of you would have gone through and understood this. The first and foremost element is now the private enterprises, non-governmental entities are allowed to work in every domain of space, and there is nothing denied to them that you can't do this, you can't do that. End-to-end capability of space sector are open to the private entrepreneurs, and they can invest and create their capability. And for that, the Department of Space and Indian Space Research Organization is available as a supportive system to them. And this is a very big change that has happened. So from an organization perspective, we are looking at the space ecosystem of the nation as a whole. As the Department of Space has the responsibility to create that ecosystem with the help of the regulator, the in-space, and the industries as the non-governmental actors. And this is a very, very important change. And whatever is regulatory, legal, promotional support, hand-holding is required is provides for in the new space sector reforms. And we all realize why industry, I think I don't have to talk to you why industry has to come in. I am very proud from Department of Space and ISRO saying that we were the very first pioneers to work with industry ever since we started working in the space program. And we did not create the manufacturing capability internally in ISRO. And the whole of the capability needed for building satellites and launch vehicles were actually built in the industries. And we are very proud that many significant part of that, it comes from the industry as supply systems. For example, rockets, almost 85% of the value addition is happening in industry. Satellites could be a little lesser because the integration of satellites still happens within ISRO premises. I think this is some change that is happening. Now, the changes that are happening is very, very interesting. After the space sector reforms, the new actors are coming in, especially in the domain of satellite building, and less in the domain of the launch vehicles in terms of the operational status of those platforms which they are going to build. And I see very much possible that operational spacecrafts could easily come out of the Indian industries in a much faster way than an operational launcher that could come out of an Indian industry. So this is a great change. And we actually expected that a little differently. We thought that the application segment in India will grow too fast, which will really demand more and more satellites, and that will demand more and more rockets. But somehow I am seeing a peaking in the satellite building and delivery of those hardwares, which is a really surprising way in which it is growing. But I strongly believe that we need to really enhance the application segment substantially by creating more and more companies, how they deliver the utility to both civilian and strategic sectors, and which will demand more and more spacecrafts to be built of various platform types and correspondingly bring the expansion of the launch capability at a later point in time. Otherwise, there is a risk of having capacity which is more than what actually it can be used to put to use. And whatever investment that we create in the spacecraft building segment should not go waste after some time. I think this is something which is very important. The demand and application demand has to be created much more. And for that, you can initially source data and systems from somewhere else. But then, over a period of time, that can be expanded, which is very, very important. We also realize that the reusable systems are extremely important in the long term, primarily because of the costs which are involved. It is from launcher side, we realize that the current launch cost for satellites are quite high, even with Indian launchers. And it is very important that we develop launch capability of significant lower cost per kilogram to space. And actually, you can see that the increase in number of satellites in the recent times has really spurred from the simple fact that access to space has really become much more easier now, because the launch cost from the 70s, 80s have now really substantially come down, and many people can actually build satellites and launch them. And yet another change is that the building satellites and compacting to a size that is manageable, engineerable, and then placed in orbit is also is becoming affordable because the microelectronics and manufacturing technology improvements. So more people are in a position to build satellites and launch them. I think all of this put together really increased the rate at which the expansion is taking place, in which I am very clear that the reusable systems are important. And we also see in the reusable spacecrafts, which are of the RLVs, class of vehicles, are really important in the long term as a satellite for strategic use. And we pay great attention to it to create and develop it in the recent times to increase the pace at which it has been going on in the past, so that it becomes operational in a very short point in time. And I'm very happy that it will be offered to the user segment for multiple users, which all of you realize it. It's important that we seek the application segment widely. I think this is what I have been telling. Here, the connecting space with various other elements in the strategic sectors or even civilian sector is equally important, according to me. I believe that the drones need to get connected with the space. The artificial intelligence activities that are happening in India, the connect to space is still very low. We also realize the cyber security and space, the connectivity is still low. We see that there is a great amount of opportunity available for us, especially in terms of securing our networks through quantum. And we seek to build a quantum key distribution satellite at the earliest opportunity and then launch so that it becomes available to the Indian community for this activity. We also have to create other capabilities like observational satellites, satellites with its own ability to do repair, refueling, recovery, movement, observation. All of these capabilities are currently in discussion in our organization for creating as a demonstration, but not in terms of deployment. I want to tell you that. Another ability that we would like to look at is to creation of robotics in significant manner. I think without that, the future space activity cannot be done effectively, because we need to build larger systems. It requires in-orbit operations, building from smaller systems to larger systems, deployable systems placement, docking. All this becomes very important. And we are looking at how this capability can be quickly enhanced, and we are going to announce some missions that are going to take place even very short time for demonstration of in-orbit repairs, access, refueling capabilities immediately. Yet another area is bringing down the cost of systems in space, because numbers increase and it is no longer possible for making space systems which are currently based on devices which are space qualified. I think this is a big issue, and sourcing of components for building space systems, especially satellites, become a bigger issue, and the cycle times involved are very long. And we need to look at how we can bring down the cost of building systems by use of the commercial components, by building more intelligence and fault tolerance into our electronics, so that we can devise them, manufacture them faster. With that new technology, it's possible to do more fault tolerant designs using commercial off-the-shelf components. And we are on this task of building this and launching them in as much as operational systems in the future, so that dependence on most of those critical components has to be brought down very, very significantly lower. Like building the space systems is equally important is to build the observational capability. As already been mentioned, the space situational awareness is a very core competence that we need to have. With increasing number of objects in space and a lot of actors coming over us, and we need to be aware of what is happening in securing the space assets which will be created both in the public domain as well as in private domain. The entire thing becomes a national asset, as all of you realize it. And it requires continuous observations, and to be really part of this community who observe it, we need to have our own capability internally. Otherwise, nobody will respect us. We will be only doing analysis. So it requires creation of large amount of infrastructure across the nation to have the observational capability, bringing all this data together along with the world operators, and then create action plans out of this in all domains. We also have to look at creating platforms with newer technologies. I think we know about the communication technology, we know about the observation, but the signal intelligence and object identification areas, hyperspectral areas are still not fully developed or not sufficiently developed or sufficiently deployed to an extent that is needed for this country. This requires very great attention and platform development, R&D domains in this sector as well. See, whatever you say and do, finally, it comes down to the knowledge and technological skill that is available in this country to build these type of systems. Even in industry, industry can source certain amount of technology from outside. But I am very sure about it, that realizing the growth of the technology in this country, you will no longer get it that easily. Though you may think it is going to come that easily, it is not going to come. And this is going to make us lag behind others over a period of time. Whatever you do, you will never be able to be matched with the best in the world. This will continue to be a major challenge unless you create your own R&D ecosystem in appropriate laboratories and institutions in this country. And for that, we need people to be supported by governmental money only. Unless the industries come up to a level that they can support such research and development activities in their ecosystem, this will remain as a major bottleneck of expanding it beyond a point. I think the initial growth will really happen with the available technology, with the available borrowed technology sometimes, or from indigenous technology that is available. But after some time, this will get stalled by various other forces. This is very, very important. And for a nation to grow in technology, especially in the space sector, I believe it is very, very important to create the technological strength in institutions. This requires, as already mentioned, some collaborative effort of the institutions that we have already created in this nation, also creation of new institutions if they are needed, working with R&D organizations and lateral movement of people from industry, academia, and research laboratories in a bigger manner than that is happening now. And investment in R&D sector need to grow. I believe the production and operational of systems in governments can still go to the industries. But considering the nature of our R&D activities in industries, especially for high technology not being grown to a level that is satisfactory in a private system, I don't believe that it will really grow in substantial manner in the next 10, 15 years or so. So this requires a constant effort and knowledge within the decision makers and administrators that this is an area that need to be nurtured and maintained, especially with respect to people. I think finally everything put together, it is the people that matters. I think we need to mentor them, we need to keep them, we need to keep the scientists and engineers motivated to keep the required R&D in various places. I think this is so equally important. While we can think about increasing the economy of space sectors connected with the strategic area, it's equally important that it will scale up and grow. I am very, very sure about it with the change reforms and the initiative that are seen there all across the defense strategy, people understanding the role of space significantly, industries getting ready in advance, then they are already ready and asking for orders. This is an interesting thing to happen. I believe that really the other way it will happen. The user will demand, you create this, and the industry will say, if you give me order, I will build up my facility. This just the reverse is happening. They are coming and telling you, I have all the capability. Why you are not giving me order? I will build it tomorrow. I think this is an interesting way of putting things. I hope this really shows the industry's readiness to take on the challenge. I think we should not lose this opportunity. All decision makers in this domain must come forth and then give them the kickstart. For this, Department of Space has taken up an initiative, and we are now hand-holding the industries to build satellites for space program. I think private industries should build on their own architecture to build it for the space program. This is definitely happening. And with this, I am hopeful that this sector will grow, and it should not limit within this nation for serving the users of this nation alone. It should really expand to serve various other needs. I think if the strategic capability in a nation gets developed not to meet its own demand, as already been told, when it becomes really a supplier of systems to others, then really it will grow to a scale that is economically viable for it to operate at a scale that will bring in new technologies and improvements over a period of time. So this is also equally important to create markets and opportunities outside the boundaries for us to use the capability that is being developed in this country. So thank you so much for this opportunity given to me to speak here, and it's an excellent platform for all of you to come together and debate on it for a very important turning point in the history of space and defense program in this country. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Of course, ISRO and scientists like you have changed the narrative from India being a welfare state to a nation capable of leading the world in space research. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the pleasure of having in our midst this morning Dr. G. Satheesh Reddy, Scientific Advisor to Honorable Raksha Mantri. May I now request him to kindly articulate his thoughts. Please put your hands together and give a warm welcome.
Very good morning. Dr. Somanath, Secretary Department of Space, Dr. P. Subbarao, General Pannu, Air Marshal Surat Singh, General Tarun Kumar, General Sunil Srivastava. We have DG SIA, Anil Prakash. We also have DG DSA here, AVM Court, and Dr. Shastri, the Director of DSP, the Space Programs Research Center, and all others who are present here. Very good morning to all of you. Should really appreciate the organizers for bringing in so many people together, both from armed forces, industry, R&D organizations, particularly from the Department of Space, and all others here together to discuss on the important aspect of space for defense. Since space has become the fourth dimension of warfare, there have been globally a lot of concentration how to use the space for the defense applications. A lot of activities have taken place, and particularly in the last couple of years, a lot of spurt in the activities globally could be seen in the space segment. Number of technologies, varieties of systems are getting developed, and every day we see a technological change coming in this area, coming out with new systems. We have been talking earlier, prior in the space for defense as communications, which actually as dual-use technologies, the ISRO has done enormous service. From there onwards, then the image intelligence came into picture, images, generating the images, and continuously improving the accuracies of the images, trying to get into centimeters accuracies and all that. From there, the importance of the LEOs has come into picture, wherein a lot of satellites have been launched for electronic intelligence, signal intelligence, or communication intelligence, or image intelligence, from there onwards going on. And then people started concentrating on this, trying to improve the accuracies, trying to sense very low signal possible, trying to detect almost all the radars available, almost all the communications, and from there onwards many things. And moving on from there to improving the positional accuracies, getting into formation flying and groups of satellites. These are again some of the important things. This is where continuously technology is changing today. If you look at about probably 6-7 years back, we were talking about the sensitivity of a detection of a signal probably at about maybe 90 dBm or so. Now we are talking about 120, 130 and things like that. That is where going on. And we were talking about accuracies of sensing a radar or kilometers. Now we are talking about meters today. That's the type of a thing. And that's how the formation flyings have come. And now it used to be you have once in 2 days, once in 3 days. Now looking for more like continuous coverage. If you look at the Indian naval requirement, you almost look at a continuous coverage, otherwise it's not useful. You give in a once in a day or once in 2 days, it is not much. It is not at all useful to the Indian naval applications. Or particularly with the mobile systems have come into picture now, that's also important for the other side also, on the ground side also. That is how those things are calling for groups of formation flying satellites and number of satellites, a continuously available ISR is another important requirement which has come into picture today. And then on the communication side, I think a lot need to be done in the communication side, space-based communication and the data rates. From there onwards, talking about shifting the whole thing from ground to space, including having space-based hubs, is another important thing where lots of people, even in the country, people are trying to work out on having hundreds of satellites, and then you have the complete satellite communication available with a hub also inside that. And from there, I think somebody was mentioning about secure communication. That's one thing what we have been listening. This is one area where we need to look at when our the friends across the borders are claiming to have the quantum communication with the space. That's one thing where we need to definitely look at very seriously, trying to see the quantum payloads available, and we are able to do the secure communication, which is the ultimate, is another important activity what we need to look at. And from there onwards, we are talking about hyperspectral payloads and then the resolutions, trying to improve the resolutions from 12 meters to 6 meters to 5 meters and things like that, and trying to have the complete library of that. It is readily available libraries of it, and talking about synthetic aperture radar related payloads, and wherein a lot of work is going on. I hear an Indian company is making a SAR payload on a drone at about 3 kgs weight, is the type of work which is going on in the country also. This again another important thing, which is very, very important things. These two are both SAR and hyperspectral payloads for the Indian Army, particularly at all the border areas, is a very important aspect which we need to look at and trying to see that. So these are all some of the areas of work which is going on and which need to go in a faster pace a lot. And particularly here, something again mentioned about the EW, space-based EW. This is an important thing where somebody has to look at it carefully, the EW capability for the space segment and by the space segment is one thing. And when we say that, then naturally the ASAT capabilities also come into picture very seriously. ASAT, particularly when we say, probably it is not advisable to have a hard kill always, which creates problem for the humankind as such. So then very important is to look at the soft killing. So then the work on that, particularly in the very high power lasers and the HPM capability, is another important area where the country has to look in. These are the two important areas where, whether it is ground-based or airborne or space-borne, both lasers and HPM technologies are the ones which we need to develop, high power but miniaturized. These are the things which we need to again look into that segment of the capabilities, leaving aside other things like co-orbital and other aspects what generally people have been talking about, but these two capabilities are very important, both high power lasers, as I said, ground-based, airborne and space-borne, and HPM. These are the two more things which we need to look at very seriously. At the same time also, another thing is the launch capabilities. When we talk about the launch capabilities, mentioned is launch on demand, when we say launch on demand, important is to see that somebody has mentioned about the size of the payload, the weight of the payload, and so the mass of the launch vehicle, the mobility of the launch vehicle, and ensuring that as small as possible, as mobile as possible, and launching from anywhere and launching quickly is another important thing what we need to look at. So launch on demand, when we say, I think General Pannu mentioned, is launch on demand or initiate on demand. Some of those techniques which need to look at it, but the most important thing is how small we are in weight and volume and how mobile we are is matters. When I talk about mobile, I also say that the mobile is the ground stations also. We have to bring in a military environment the ground stations also to be mobile. Again, the satellites, what is the altitude and communication capability with a smaller antennas and smaller ground stations is another important aspect what we need to look at. We can't have in a military environment a large ground stations fixed at 4 locations which cannot be assured during the war time. So this is another important thing. So that calls for another important area of having satellites in the very low Earth orbit. This is one thing. Yes, people are talking about both very low Earth orbit and also medium orbit satellites also. There's about 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, 3,500, and also talking about satellites at about 200 kilometers. I think I saw a paper or 2 days back very seriously talking about it from the friends across the border on this particularly low Earth orbit, very low Earth orbit things. This is very important, which actually ensures if the technologies can be built in the country, you will be having very high resolutions. Communications important, communication intelligence, hyperspectral images resolutions. And then of course, the ground stations also the size can be brought in very largely. So this plays an important role, and the size can be smaller also. You can launch multiple things and multiple satellites, and you will be able to put in large number of satellites into it is another important area. So these are all some of the technological areas. If you can go into it, you can keep going on and on and on, continuously talking about technologies, lots of new ideas coming into this area. But when you look at top level, what we need to do, and we are the major segments who are playing the major role in this. The armed forces and the government, this is one thing. R&D organizations. When I say industry, I try to divide into 2 portions. One is the startups, another is the remaining industries. These are the 4 segments I think we should look at how the activities for space for defense can be taken forward. This is an important thing. When we say it, again at the top level, it can be seen as 3 things. One is a continuous developmental activities, building advanced technology systems, and that too with the vision of Honorable Prime Minister having complete Atmanirbharata in that, self-reliance in this. This is 2 things. Building the advanced technologies and having the complete capability within the country. And then next, I think Dr. Somanath mentioned in the last that, which in turn, as again in the words of Honorable Prime Minister, the market size increasing for the industry here and making the country proud as make for the world. So these are the 3 things, if you look at it, top level we need to look at. So who need to play what role is the clarity in that is very, very important. I think very clearly the R&D organizations, primarily in the government side, ISRO and DRDO, looking at the cutting edge technologies, working for the futuristic systems, and working for the technologies which are very advanced and trying to develop those systems, those technologies is a continuous process which we need to look at. And that is where the country's aspirations are, that need to develop the cutting edge technologies, or in other words, the first of its kind systems. And that's what actually Dr. Somanath also has mentioned, that we should not be lagging. We should be seeing that we are able to develop the systems. By the time anybody else comes up, we have that system. And that ensures certain things. What actually General Pannu has also mentioned, that demand and development. If you are actually advanced in your technologies and in your thinking, the demand and development will be less. That means you are already available, the technologies are already available with you. This is where we need to look at, and we need to concentrate, we need to invest in the space R&D is one thing. The R&D organizations, working with the industry, working with the startups, nurturing them, utilizing the facilities, utilizing the facilities commonly by everyone is one of the important things what this has to look into. Second, the armed forces side, I think a clear roadmap of what we need and how much we need, when do we need, is one thing what we have to lay very clearly, which actually gives a clear message to the industry to get into these activities. This is one thing very, very important. Industry, I think these two are very, very clear. Industry, my feeling, there is nothing like I feel industry ready. Industry cannot be fully ready unless they have something very clearly seen before them. And need not be orders, but then there is an activity. If I get into it, I am going to have this type of a business is one thing what industry needs to look at, see. And the moment that is seen, I think definitely industry will jump into it. There is no doubt. That is the job what we need to see, that yes, this roadmap is available to them. Today in the other segment of defense, if you look at it, I think the way industry has jumped into it is because they could be very clearly seen that there is good amount of market and lot of opportunities are there is one thing. It is no more that we are going ahead with the DPSUs alone. It is all the segments are open to the private industry in a big way. You can see in the last couple of years, even the critical systems like missiles and bombs, leaving aside other systems, have gone to many private industries to jointly work or co-develop with DRDO and then manufacture them, and getting orders for them in large numbers is one thing what has seen. So that is what made a number of industries to invest into it and come forward and get into it. So that type of a message, a clarity needs to go to the industry to get into it. And so we need to look at the armed forces and the on one side on the roadmap for this industry to be ready. Second thing also on the technology is also some amount of roadmap, need not be very long roadmap, but maybe 2 years to 5 years roadmap needs to be created where people can invest into it and get into it. Organizations like DRDO or any other R&D organization to get into it, this space segment of the defense. This is one thing. Second, coming to the startups. Startups are one, again, I think in this segment are doing well. Lots of startups have come. They are enthusiastic and trying to develop lots of things. A lot of people have come in, and we have seen that many things coming out of them, like whether it is Skyroot or Through or Bellatrix or Rajasthan, many other people you can find every day one startup coming out and talking about new technologies and many new technologies which they are working out on that. Actually, I can see them, they are the extended arm of the R&D organizations and developing these things, and which actually they can work together and try to see. One important thing what the startups look for is one thing, the support, particularly the financial support is one thing what the startups are looking for. I think again that's one thing we need to ensure that the financial support is available to these people, and also the necessary support in utilizing the facilities in the organizations which have already established these facilities is another thing what we need to provide to the startups. I think if these two we are able to do, the startups are coming up well and they are able to do, and they will be able to do a lot more, is one thing actually very clearly can be seen. And I don't think startups will be a competitor to bigger industries or to the R&D organizations also. This is one thing very clear. We have to be in our mindset that they are, as said, extended arms of the technology development for R&D organizations and others. This is one thing. And particularly here, one thing again I'd like to mention to the industries, when I say the bigger industries, they also have to think that they are actually more like technology, the startups are the technology developer for the industries. Unless this comes into picture, it should not be seen that the competitors or the startups should not be afraid of the bigger industries. This should not be coming. A synergetic approach between all the organizations should be seen. So we have to ensure that they become the technological supply chain for the bigger industries. That's how it should be seen. In fact, the bigger industries should be able to fund to get certain things developed by the startups, leaving us at the government organizations, and make them the feeder channels for this. And mostly actually the startups, generally if you look at, I don't think they are into, leaving us a couple of them, are into production. They are more into development, develop the technology, sell off the technology and get into another technology. This is the general trend what you see in startups. So that is one important thing as far as the startups is concerned. Second, all of us, particularly in the government, we need to ensure that the technology in the country what is being developed needs to be given priority and needs to be protected. In the name of competition or other things or whatever it is, we should not make them compete with international giants, and then they wouldn't be able to sustain that competition. This is another important thing. Then never our technologies within the country will be growing. Yes, definitely they need to be competitive price-wise, otherwise also. But then one who is starting afresh now, if you put across with a global competition, it's very, very difficult. So that is one thing which we need to see. And we also need to look at what is that we should get from outside and what we should encourage here. This is one thing we have to be very clear. It should not be that the technologies from outside should not be coming and killing the interest in developing in technologies within the country. This is to be very clear, and then we will never become Atmanirbhar if that goes on. So any country to become Atmanirbhar and self-reliant in that, we have to struggle. We have to go through this. Unless, see, today ISRO is able to come up and you are able to do Mangalyaan, Chandrayaan and whatnot and all that, you are looking for Gaganyaan. It's years and decades of struggle what you have gone through and then try to build up, and now everything is getting opened up, industries are able to do and all that. So similar thing, we have to go through a struggle for any country for it to become self-reliant in the technologies. That is what is very important. Otherwise, we remain always looking for technologies from somewhere else and sort of a thing. So this is what. So we need to look at how we can support with some amount of difficulties the technologies are grown in the country, whether it is in the R&D organizations or in the startups or in the industry, is one thing what we need to look at and work out the mechanisms to see that we are able to support the indigenous technologies in the country. This is another important thing what we need to look at. And in this particular aspect, this is very important. See, an industry can invest, an industry can come forward if there is some good amount of market over a given amount of period. Industry will not be able to make one or two systems and just make this for 1 year or 2 years and again change a product, It's not possible. That is why we use it. That may not be that much possible in space segment, but still we can see it. In the other side, we say like even in the other products of the defense or other side, a sustained market. That's what we say. So there should be a market available. But what I say is to industry, if you look at as India is alone as a market, it's very difficult for you to see that you have a sustained market. And I don't think the armed forces here will be able to give that many orders for so many industries to be sustained for next 5 years, 10 years. So we need to look at a global market. So we should know how to market ourselves, our product globally. Yes, for that fundamentally, yes, the technology should be competitive and the price should be competitive. There is no doubt about it. This is one thing actually India, if we have to become the vision of Honorable Prime Minister that make for the world, the only way that makes is definitely is the price, the cost competitiveness. That is where we should be able to take an edge. Leaving aside, I am confident that we will be able to develop globally competitive or comparable technologies within the country. That capability definitely comes up, if not today, but definitely if we get into that, we will be able to develop. So this global competitiveness attitude should come in the industries where we are making or developing the systems for the world. This is actually one very good thing happened in the last couple of years in the country is the mindset of the startups in this country is globally competitive. There is one thing what we have to see. Not just I'm talking about space or defense past space or anything. Anything you look at it, when he is coming out with an idea and trying to develop, the idea is looking at globally competitive. So that's why he's looking, most of the startups, you look at it, the funding is coming from outside, many people. That is because the idea or the work what he is trying to do is a globally competitive. This one sea change which has come in this country, which is going to bring in a lot of change in this country is that. So similarly, bigger industries also, we should look at the products that we are trying to sell it all over the world. So that attitude also has to come in, and we should become globally competitive and try to make it for the world, making the country flourish and prosperous also in this. So that is how I see that who should play what role is one of the important things. So keeping these points into the mind, all these 4 elements, what I said is armed forces and R&D organizations and the startups and industry, they have to play their roles and all of them have to work synergetically and nobody is competitor to another. This is one thing very importantly what we have to see, and the focus being trying to continuously being advanced in the technologies. And space segment is one thing for the defense particularly. Every year you see there will be new technologies or new types of systems will be coming into the space segment. So we have to be attentive and we have to come out with completely out of the box thinking here and then work on those technologies is one important thing. I'm sure the conference will be able to deliberate on all these aspects and will be able to come out with specific ideas and roadmaps in each and every direction, and wish the conference a great success. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Namaskar.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy, for being with us here this morning and being a part of the dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time now to present mementos to the honorable dignitaries on the days as a token of our appreciation and thanks. May I request President SIA-India, Dr. Subbarao, to kindly do us the honors. We thank Dr. G. Satheesh Reddy for his presence here today. He is scientific advisor to Raksha Mantri. May I request Dr. Subbarao to kindly present the memento. We thank Shri S. Somanath, Secretary, Department of Space and Chairman, ISRO. Our heartfelt thanks to Lieutenant General Tarun Kumar Aich, AVSM, Deputy Chief of Army Staff, Strategy. We thank Air Marshal Surat Singh, AVSM, VM, BSM, Director General Air Operations. Our thanks to Lieutenant General PGS Pannu, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, retired, former Deputy Chief, Indian Integrated Defence Staff Operations. And our very special thanks to Lieutenant General Sunil Srivastava, AVSM, VSM, retired, Director CENJOWS. Thank you, Dr. Subbarao, for presenting the mementos. And now may I invite Lieutenant General Sunil Srivastava, AVSM, VSM, retired, Director CENJOWS, to propose the vote of thanks.
Dr. Reddy, Dr. Somanath, Dr. Subbarao, General Pannu, Marshal Surat Singh, General Aich, DG DSA, Ambassador Sood, Mr. Anil, all present distinguished delegates here, serving officers from all the three services, representatives from the academia and the industry, and my dear friends who are joining us live. Many Category A training establishments from the three services are also joining us live today. So first and foremost, I would like to thank each one of you for having been present here today, as also those who were present with us yesterday, and we hope that you will, through today and tomorrow, be with us in these very serious and very, very salient deliberations. Keeping my address brief, I think all of us will agree that we couldn't have asked for better stakeholders, very senior stakeholders, to be sharing their viewpoints and insights with us today, with Air Marshal Surat Singh and General Aich, telling us very succinctly as to what is it that the three services want. And we couldn't have had a better expression of what ISRO and what the entire R&D fraternity, and not just the R&D fraternity, but between Dr. Reddy and Dr. Somanath, they have laid out a very clear role as they see of each one of these stakeholders present, whether they are users, whether they are the industry, startups, MSMEs or the bigger ones, whether it is academia. We're very grateful to each one of you, sir, for having given us a very clear insight into how we should be looking and deliberating on the various many issues that you all have outlined. There was hardly anything that has not been touched upon, from critical emerging technologies to scales, capacities, what have you. We have unique challenges, but indeed, in the space sector for sure, the last 2-3 years have shown that India has a promise I think no other country has evinced so far in a short period of time. And with such deliberations becoming regular, more periodical, we are sanguine. And when I say we, all of us here, all the think tanks, and for their presence and collaboration, I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to SIA and Mr. Anil too. They're the ones who have been the main drivers. General Khandare is not present here today, but he was the inspiring mind behind the event. So thank you everyone, and we look forward to very engaging deliberations ahead. Please join me in giving all the dignitaries a very big hand. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, as we are all aware that there is an exhibition, so we will request the honorable dignitaries seated with us on the dais to kindly proceed to the exhibition area, which is at the RXL area. We also have a networking tea break, but please do remember we congregate back in this hall at 11 a.m. for the next session, which will be an environmental scan by Lieutenant General Sunil Srivastava. Please do enjoy the break and join us back in time. Thank you.